With the 2020 college football season now in the rearview mirror, the NFL season winding down, that means we're getting closer and closer to the NFL draft. And of course, the next several months, we're going to have a lot of mock drafts, a lot of NFL draft coverage. So what we're going to do in this video is talk about the latest mock draft from the NFL Draft Bible. Now, in it, they have a 3-round draft in it, and they have 3 Notre Dame players being picked. And it also includes Notre Dame's 3 consensus and unanimous All-Americans this year. Of course, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Notre Dame linebacker, was unanimous All-American. And in this NFL Draft Bible mock draft, they have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah going number 17 overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, if Koramoah is picked in the first round, and right now most projections have him going anywhere from the middle to late first round. I've even seen one from Todd McShay of ESPN, and I'm going all the way at 9th. But Ric Serritella in his NFL Draft Bible mock draft has him going 17th. And the Raiders are a trendy pick for Owusu-Koramoah, who is considered the second best draft linebacker in the draft behind Micah Parsons from Penn State. And Parsons is mostly projected to go in the top 10 to 12 picks. The Raiders being a very linebacker-needy team. Obviously, Mike Mayock has a connection to Notre Dame from when he used to do the games. And there's just a lot of factors that have people sending Koramoah to the Raiders at number 17. Now, the interesting thing about that pick, and really about Owusu-Koramoah overall being a first-round pick, not since Bob Crable went to the New York Jets with the 23rd pick of the 1982 NFL Draft, has Notre Dame had a linebacker taken in the first round, which sounds kind of crazy to say, but that's what the research shows. I think we can all agree that had Jalen Smith not got hurt in the Fiesta Bowl against Ohio State back in 2015, he would have been a first-round pick in that following 2016 NFL Draft. But because of the knee injury, he fell into the early part of round 2. Manti Te'o, of course, was a second-round pick. Courtney Watson was a second-round pick. So if you go through history, not since Crable in 1982 has Notre Dame had a first-round pick. So Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah going in round 1 would certainly give Notre Dame a little bit of a boost in recruiting, at least something that they can sell in recruiting, to have a first-round draft pick, a linebacker, something they haven't had in a very long time. The other 2 players that he has going in the first 3 rounds, and actually both going in the second round, is left guard Aaron Banks and left tackle Liam Eichenberg. Now, this is the first mock draft that I've seen Aaron Banks go as high as Serritella has him, and he has him going 47th to the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, obviously, Aaron Banks is a California native, so this would be sort of a going home for him. And this, like I said, this is the highest that I've seen Banks go, and it's the first time I've obviously seen him go ahead of Eichenberg. He has Eichenberg going number 57 to the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I've seen Eichenberg in a lot of mock drafts. He's in sort of the early second round. I see him as a mid to high 30s guy, a couple in the 50s. I've even seen a couple in the first round. We'll kind of see how his projection develops over these next several months as we get close to the draft, as more and more NFL teams start to devour his film and just see how steady he was. I think he could be a guy that goes up because he's not as flashy as some of the other tackles in the draft, but he's steady, he's dependable, and he's a very good pass blocker. And, of course, in the NFL, where this past season there was only 2 running backs that had over 1,200 yards rushing, it's a pass-heavy league right now. So a guy like Eichenberg, who can be a starter at either tackle spot, who's as dependable as he hasn't given up a sack since the 5th game of the 2018 season. That's a stretch of over 30 games where he hasn't allowed a sack. So I think he will be someone who rises up, and I could see him being a first-round pick. And, of course, every starting left tackle of the Brian Kelly era has been a first-round pick so far. Obviously began with Zach Martin back in the 2014 NFL Draft. A couple years later, Ronnie Stanley went in the first round, number 6 overall, to the Baltimore Ravens in the 2016 NFL Draft. And most recently, Mike McGlinchey was the number 9 overall pick to the 49ers in the 2018 NFL Draft. So Eichenberg certainly has some big shoes to fill. And I'd be a little surprised, honestly, if he fell out of the first round. But it also is a very deep tackle draft. So if because of that the top tackles start to fall a little bit, then you could see a scenario where Eichenberg and other players kind of fall down, which could knock him out of the first round. But if you see a run on tackles early, because in a pass-happy league, of course, you need quarterbacks, but you also need people protecting the quarterback. So if a run starts early on tackles, then you could see guys like Eichenberg go up. But, of course, this is all very, very early in the draft process. We haven't seen the interviews, the pro days. It's going to be a lot different this year. No combine. NFL teams are limited to how many people they can have at pro day. So it's going to be a very, very interesting process. And it's going to really be about film. It's going to be a lot about film. And we saw this last year when COVID hit, and a lot of the pre-draft stuff ended up getting shut down after the combine, getting shut down. So you had to rely more on film. And I think that's where a guy like Eichenberg could really benefit in this draft, because you're going to watch the film and you're going to see a very, very steady, talented, and big football player that played a lot of high leverage games, a lot of high leverage snaps. And then, of course, Owusu-Koramoah has tremendous film. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this process fills out. It's going to see if any other players, like maybe Tommy Trumbull, any of the Notre Dame defensive ends, could jump up and rise up a little bit of the draft too. So, but that is the mock draft from Ric Serritella of NFL Draft Bible. You can find my article about these three players being selected at irishbreakdown.com. And of course, we have a link to the full mock draft, so you can check it out from the NFL Draft Bible. You can see the full mock draft in that link, which will tell you who your favorite NFL team picks. So obviously, this relates to Notre Dame players, but not everybody. Obviously, a lot of Notre Dame fans have different favorites, so you can see who Serritella has your favorite team taking. So make sure you are staying locked into irishbreakdown.com. Make sure you've subscribed to our YouTube channel. Sure you've subscribed to our Irish Breakdown podcast on whichever form you use. And of course, as always, stay locked into irishbreakdown.com.